Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have a sharp game to share with you from round 9 of the 2025 FIDE World Junior Chess Championship. On the white end, Pranav V, current pack leader of the event, playing against Aswath S. Alright, on board we have a King's Indian attack setup. Not a typical King's Indian attack game, where white is attacking black on the king side. In this early stage, at least, a lot of attention by white on the queen side. Follow up from here, knight d7, eyeing up an e5 advance, forming an ideal pawn center. Bishop is obstructed. Why doesn't the knight maybe go to c6 instead to try and shoot for e5? Well, there's also a downside with that. That downside being the c pawn is obstructed. So knight c6, d4, and d pawn based openings the c pawn likes to play. It's knight d7 in this game. White does not swing the bat completely around in this case. Following g3 with bishop to g2 takes into account this advance, so a pawn commitment at this stage. d4, no e5. e6, bishop g2 only now, and b5. So a pawn move by white that frequently ties in well with the bishop here on g2 on the long diagonal is c4. b5 is looking to combat the c4 advance. Also, the bishop's eyes have been opened up. b5, not without its drawbacks. 4 holes have been created, and we're going to see white try and take advantage of a square or two shortly. But first, castles, knight gf6, and now here we go, knight e5. A couple pieces have been improved with that last move, and there's now a serious threat. Knight c6, and the queen is a goner. So c5 here, some air for the queen. Knight c6, take your pick. b6 or c7 for the queen. Follow up from here, a4. Now, white's castled, black is not. Black is 2 moves out from castles. This may be your cue to try and stir up trouble playing here as white. Let's try and open lines as fast as possible. And maybe we could get at that king that's still stuck in the center. a4 is a great start, trying to help out the rook. How to react here? In the game, b4 is played. What other options are there? If black captures here on d4, the idea would not be to simply recapture. You would be asking for trouble. This here being the trouble. Development with tempo, the queen has a responsibility to babysit the knight. Not fun. So what would be the response to this capture? We take advantage of that weakened c6 square. Queen has to make a move, and the knight here gets to hang out for just another move or two. Get the capture on b5, rook is happy, and a little bit later from now we could think about recapturing on d4. So we don't see this capture here on d4. Also, if black responds with the capture on a4, something you could say to yourself immediately as white, the rook is developed. So if we're taking here on a4, we're not really helping the rook out. That's not really the best way to recapture. What did that b5 move do? Well, what was it doing? Is a holding up c4 advance. We could play c4 right now. It would be the queen that's the more efficient recapturer of a4. This would be an excellent follow-up to the capture on a4. In this game, black makes sure the a file does not open up. Now we have c4. What do you do here? In the game, it's the capture en passant. Forget about this capture. You're hanging the rook. If this capture here on d4, yet again, we would see knight c6. And in this case, we don't have this capture on b5 to support the knight, but we would have a capture on d5. And a little bit from there, we could think about recapturing on d4. All right, in this one, Black's response to c4 is b takes c3 en passant. You could capture in either direction. White plays it, develops another piece. Now we get the capture on e5. And after knight d7, we see f4. So these next few moves are extremely important. This is really where the game is won, where a decisive advantage is obtained. So important moments right around here, to be sure. Black's response is rook to b8. And the scales start to tip slightly in White's favor. We're looking at a +1 evaluation. The top move is c4. Really want to draw some attention to this, this position right here. In the game, rook b8 is played, and White's follow-up is f5. Now, what are some reasons for this move, rook to b8? It's very sensible. A lot of positives. For one, half open file. Two, there's a hole on b4. This will act as a nice pivot for the rook. We see that in the game. Rook b8, follow-up move for black, rook b4. Anything else? Yes. With the rook on b8, it's less tactically vulnerable. There are potential tricks in the air for White along this diagonal, with the rook being unprotected here on a8. I want to highlight a trick that's available for White. If, let's say, the rook stays here and rather than c4, a different natural looking move is played. For instance, bishop e7. Let's say the game continued with f5, and before there's this capture and the rook cutting off the king from castling. Let's say black castles right here. Well, this is where we could now see the trick on d5. This is a red hot square, I should point out. 3 attackers, 1 defender, extremely vulnerable to these tricks. This would be a winning shot for White. You recapture right away, the queen takes back, lands a check, and says thanks for the rook. One other detail at this moment here is that if black first includes rook captures rook, we're recapturing with the king, keeping our queen in a spot to recapture on d5. So let's go back here and see about what the computer has in mind. Rather than the move in the game, rook to b8, it says c4. Now let's put these same moves on for White and see how things are different. After f5, the bishop can now develop with check. The king is kicked to the corner. That's significant. And now black can castle. And if in this position, White goes ahead and takes on d5 with the bishop, White would be losing. Because by including this capture right now, the king is no longer in a spot to recapture. Queen would be pulled away from the d5 square, and black is just winning out. Now there is another way White could, in this position, take on d5. There's knight takes d5 here. And at the end of this line I'm putting on, it's a gambit line here for black, but black has compensation for the pawn. First of all, in this situation, if you take with the bishop, that's going to be a problem. Black would be winning. Bishop b7 here, placing the knight in a pin, as well as securing the rook in multiple ways. Black would be in a winning position here, but after queen takes rook, that trick is still in the air. A position like this, it's calling it close to equal. Rook to b8 being a move, follow up bishop here. King position is something that sticks out to me at the end of this line. Queens are still on board. This particular arrangement, G3 H2 structure, are these open diagonals towards the king. Black will have a much more secure structure for the king. An eventual h6 g7 construction would be ideal. So tricks are in the air, in short, on this diagonal. Tricks on d5. Rook b8 in this game. Follow up, f5. And black's response is rook to b4. Now, this turns out to be a losing move. It says best is to take here on e5. Now, why doesn't black maybe go for this move? Well, there's certainly some issues playing in this way. First of all, how do you recapture here on e6? If you're taking with the bishop developing a new piece, this pawn is up for grabs. And if you take with the pawn, it's going to be a bit trickier to get this king castled, isn't it? Rook eyeing up to the f8 square. A couple interesting follow-up moves from this point would be knight b5, eyeing a pawn, also looking forward to coordinating quickly with that knight, targeting an unprotected knight. I mean, just look at the development for each side here. There's only one piece developed for black, and it's certainly not stable. So this would be one idea in this position, as well as e4. Striking d5 for a fourth time, and also opening up this idea of queen h5. Hitting with check, hitting the unprotected knight. Okay. Black does not go in for this capture. It plays rook to b4. We get the captures on e6. And now the follow-up e4 here. I want to point out, just real quick here, how long it took to play this move here. 37 minutes was invested at this moment here by white before playing f5. I imagine another move that was considered here was e4, and then some variation like this, eyeing up the sensitive d6 square. 37 minutes invested. All right, f5, rook b4, we get the captures, e4 only now. Influencing this duo, still with an eye on queen h5. d4 is the follow-up, knight b5, and from here we have h5. At this point, considered top move, does cut out any ideas of queen h5. We're looking at something close to +2 here. Follow-up, knight takes a. It says best is queen to c2. This is a really slick move. There's a couple ideas behind queen c2. The queen is functioning like a queen from this post. She's doing more than putting pressure here on c5. If black responded to this top move, queen c2, with, let's say, a6, here's how white can respond. Then I could hop into d6, and now there is this idea to next play e5, and then queen g6. And if black tries to prevent that with, let's say, e5, there's these ideas here. Bishop d2, and next up, this pawn break. Again, this king stuck in the center. We're trying to open lines. There's some queen c6 move here, some fancy queen c4, maybe a mate on f7. Big problems here for black in this position. Another detail here, if this top move, queen c2, was played rather than the one in the game, knight takes pawn. If queen c2 and, let's say, black captures on e5, there would be a beautiful shot. Rook captures bishop. We're seeing another path here showing up for the queen after the recapture. And she's not just focused On this diagonal, potentially, after that e5 move, there's queen takes c5 here. What is this queen not doing? Supporting a knight jump as a follow-up here to d6. This would be a crushing position for white. All right. This top move, not played in this game. It's knight takes a. Seems sensible. Track down a pawn. You have a passer a. You're also threatening a fork. Bishop b7 covers the fork. Bishop d2 from here. Rook takes b. Queen c1. And from here, queen b6 is played. Now, it says top is to go ahead and give up the exchange and play this position. It's calling it about +1. Black does not play in this way. Develops the queen to defend the rook. Knight b5. Rook b3. Queen c4, rook b2. Queen c1, rook b3. It seems like black would be content with a draw here, but white is in fact winning. Only has about 14 minutes remaining on his clock. Spends a huge chunk of it right here, and it pays off. Spent about 8 minutes on this next move. Top move. Let me throw this one to you as a pop quiz. What move would you play here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, star move here. Bishop a5. What's going on with that one? Well, a deflection sacrifice. Deflecting what exactly? Well, the queen away from her defensive e6. Pretty much have to take the bishop. That's the move in the game. The bishop is allowed to live. Tricks on c7 are in the air. For instance, the bishop is captured in this game. And here we go. Queen c4. On the rook, on the pawn. King still stuck in the center. Rook takes knight. Queen takes e6 check. King tries to run. Important move here. Only one winning move. He finds it. Bishop h3. Threatening mate. Take the knight for mate. Very important that you play in this way. If, for instance, white simply wins some material, unleashes this attack on the queen, this gives black a moment to breathe. Can play queen to b6, offering a queen exchange. And now it says best for white is to welcome the queen exchange, which would not be ideal. Two minor pieces versus the rook. Also, these two pawns are looking especially scary in an ending. A queen, a position where there aren't any queens and there isn't going to be a mating attack against the king. You could start to see the king improve and maybe start helping out advance these pawns. This would not be a good idea. White would like to, in short, still keep the queens on board. Still going for some attack on the king. It's first bishop to h3. There's no way to save the rook. It's not going anywhere. Have to address. Now, the rook can't move and defend the mate threat, let's say. It's bishop to c8, a demotion. Some squares have been conceded by black. No longer on the main diagonal. d5, no longer under control. a8, no longer under control. White takes advantage of both of these squares shortly. Only after bishop c8 do we see this capture on b5. Black tries to get the queens off, but no. The queen has access to d5 with the bishop on c8 instead of b7. Black tries again. Well, in this case, you could actually allow a queen exchange. Bishop takes knight. If you want to exchange queens, well, these two double isolated pawns would immediately turn into monsters, connected passers. Queen takes, bishop here, rook a8 played. Top at this point is to exchange queens. By this point, it's completely lost for black. Monster pawns. Every black piece on the back rank. What's tried from here? Bishop e7. In comes b6. And from here, king d7. Now, just a little attention here in these final moments of the game. Technique. You could go ahead and play b7. This is a winning approach. But is it entirely clear? You know, those pawns have been broken up. There are these connected passers, the bishop pair. Computer says it's winning, but maybe there's still some more work to be done. A far cleaner approach here is the following. After the move in the game, king d7, you land the check and kick that king right back to where he came from. And now you follow up with b7. You go for the win of the piece rather than the win of the exchange. And in the end, these two pawns remain. Follow up from here, rook to h6. There was the threat to land a skewer. Black's out of that. This rook cutting off the king. After rook to a1, black resigns. There's no good way to meet this idea of rook a8 for mate. What are you supposed to do here? King c8, thanks for the bishop. And if you try to make a run for it, one way to follow up is like this, and you're still going to end up losing a piece. Completely winning here for white. All right, in this one though, after rook a1, black resigns. So a very sharp game right here. This earlier moment, again, this f5 move, a lot of time spent in this early stage finding this move here, and ended up paying off. 37 minutes for f5 there. Anyhow, what are your thoughts with this one? Feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.